Welcome to Unbroken the podcast. I'm Savannah Levins. I started this podcast because in my life experience and working as a news reporter, I found everyone's been knocked down or blindsided or had their world seemingly turned upside down at some point. And for many people, it's cathartic to talk about their experiences out loud. And likewise, it can be therapeutic to hear other people's stories and know that there is light at the end of all darkness. If you have a story you'd like to share on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Just email unbrokenthepodcast@gmail.com and please rate, review, and subscribe. Today on the podcast, we have Katie, who says her world went all wrong, seemingly all at once. But she was able to turn the worst year of her life into one where she grew the most, even though it definitely wasn't easy. Here's Katie. Today on the podcast, we have Katie. Katie, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, from your email, from what I can gather, is that things kind of, for you, went downhill very quickly and seemed to be a little bit of a snowball effect. Can you kind of tell me how that all started and what all happened?
Yeah, so it really kind of started at the beginning of last year, so 2018. I pretty quickly into the year, my husband of 4 years, we had been together 8 years, told me that he was unhappy in our marriage and he didn't want to be married anymore. And this was very shocking for me because up until that day, I was happy in the marriage. So didn't see it coming. We had not been having problems for a while, things like that. So told me about that beginning of January, and things started kind of moving from there. So he moved out the end of February, and kind of going through the legal process and separating everything and selling the home and all of that happened there. Yeah. So I had a dog that I had gotten back in college. So he was 15 years old last year, and it was beginning of April. I took him to the vet. He had some stuff going on, and turns out he needed to have his gallbladder removed.
Oh.
So getting hit with that kind of on the heels of everything else was challenging. I was also challenged with, A, making that decision by myself at this point, and then B, do I put a 15-year-old dog through a major organ removal? But ultimately at that point, he was very active and just didn't seem like he was ready to die. Yeah. So I said, I can afford the surgery. I'll put him through it. He can make the choice from there. He did make it through the surgery, so that was wonderful. He knew he could not leave me at that point. So that was good. The thing that came from that is I'm a mental health therapist. I own my own practice. And one of my dreams for years has been to have a therapy dog. But I didn't want to get a dog while I had my other dog. His name is Bailey. At the same time. So my dream has been kind of, okay, I'm going to have a therapy dog at some point. It may be, quite a while. But Bailey required a lot of supervision after the surgery. He had a stomach tube and I had to give him a lot of medicine throughout the day. And at that point, I really had no other option but to bring him to work. And he was a little 15-pound Yorkie. Never, ever in his life would have been a good therapy dog. But after the surgery, he became a therapy dog. I called him an imposter therapy dog. So I started bringing him to work. And he just made everything so wonderful for me at my office, having him there and just being able to be with him every day. And then just the feedback I got from my clients, having him in the room, even though he wasn't very interactive with anybody, but just knowing that they could come and rub him or just have him there. And it really opened my eyes to how impactful a dog in the office space could be. I also was very thankful that, I knew after the surgery, he's 15 years old. He's probably not going to be around too much longer. So I got to spend every day, all day with him, in the last year of his life. So that was very special for me. But got through that and just so grateful that he made it through and he was still there. I don't really know what I would have been like if he had passed.
Yeah, and I want to ask about that because I know you were going through a really hard time, of course, at that time. When you say, I didn't see that coming, your ex-husband asking for a divorce, did you look back in retrospect and see things? Because I think some people might relate to that and be like, I had no idea. Where did that come from? And then what did you learn from that whole experience?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that, any relationship is perfect or great. There's definitely challenges. probably a year and a few months prior to him telling me all this, he took a job that where he was traveling every week. So that was a huge, challenge in our relationship, him being gone every week. He wasn't gone all week, but he was gone somewhere every week. Mm-hmm. So that definitely put some distance in between us, but kind of the goal all along for us was that we'll do this for a couple years. It was a great opportunity, and then he'll move on to something else where that wouldn't be the case. So if I had to say, I could go back and look and see that something was leading up to this, I would say there was that. It provided some distance between us.
Physically and, emotionally, yeah. But being blindsided like that, I mean, was that something where you're more angry or sad or shocked or...
Yeah, all of those things. Definitely shocked first because I just wasn't, I don't know. My office mate does couples therapy, and so I hear a lot of, information from her on things. And to me, it just seems like when someone's heading for divorce, there's probably some buildup and some conflict. And we didn't have that. So, yes, I think initially I was very shocked and kind of didn't understand and couldn't wrap my mind around, like, what this actually meant. And then... definitely a lot of sadness, so much sadness. Before last year, I would have said, I never cry. I'm not a crier. Mm-hmm. I think that I wish I had gone and marked down every single day that I cried of last year, because it probably would have been 80% of the days.
Wow.
So tons and tons of sadness. And yes, maybe a lot of sadness from other parts of my life that never came out, and this, probably broke me open in that way. Yeah. And yeah, there was definitely anger. Mm-hmm. There were some of the way things unfolded after that news that created some anger in me. So,
mm-hmm. A lot of people might be going through something, listeners right now, who are feeling a lot of those emotions, maybe in relation to a divorce or not. Any advice you have on dealing with those dark days? I think that, and I've gotten this feedback from some people in my life. I'm also very fortunate. I am a therapist, but several of my friends are therapists. I'm also a yoga instructor. That's nice.
Yeah. I'm also a yoga instructor, so I've got a lot of those people in my life as well, and a lot of other healers, massage therapists and intuitive healers, and people in those fields. So I think that I had a lot of padding around me in that way with my social supports. But I would say one of the things that I believe helped me was very quickly after I heard this news. I mean, I think that morning I texted a very close friend of mine and I said, all right, which therapist am I going to?
Yes.
So I got into a therapist who I still see, and she's wonderful. But I got in with her very, very quickly, and I went every single week. And that meant some weeks it was on my day off, and some weeks she couldn't see me on my day off, and so I had to take about 4 hours off of work. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to go back to work after a therapy session. So, I really made space in my my job and my life for therapy, and I think, obviously I'm going to do that because I am a therapist.
Yeah.
But I think that was a huge thing. I think very quickly I hired an attorney to help me navigate the legal side of things, which I think was so helpful. And I think one of the biggest things for me, and I'm a big Brene Brown fan, which I think probably a lot of people are, but I think vulnerability. I think I had to be vulnerable. I had to open up and tell people. I had to tell my family. I had to tell my friends. I had to tell colleagues. Yoga teacher friends. All these different people. I guess I didn't have to tell them. I chose to tell them. Yeah. I chose to open up, and I chose to let them in and let them know what was going on with me. And in my mind, I did that so that I could, so maybe I would feel better by just letting people know, but also I could get support from them. And that's kind of what these people are there for. They're there for the good things in your life, and they're there for the hard times.
Well, that's the hardest part for so many people. I know for me, when I'm going through something hard, I get in that mindset where I don't want to burden people, or I don't want to be embarrassed by opening up this way. But, I'm a huge advocate for therapy as well. So you listeners, even the therapist needs therapy sometimes.
Yes.
I think that's great. And vulnerability, that's like some of the biggest struggles for people. Mm-hmm. So that's great as well. And then you said you were dealing with that, of course, healing from that, and your dog being sick, your beloved dog. And then didn't you say something happened with your car, or something else happened on the heels of that?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm a yoga instructor, and I was had a class I was teaching that day, and like every yoga studio that I've ever been in America or anywhere else, they have cubbies out front, and that's where you put your stuff. And so just this one Thursday, I was teaching a class, and I put my stuff in the cubby just like any other time I was at the studio. And then I left the space after class and grabbed my purse, my keys. I don't need to pull them out to unlock my car, so I just kind of grabbed my purse and walked out. And I park in a different spot every time we were in a kind of an urban area, and I didn't see my car, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I didn't park there. Maybe that was last week, whatever. Oh, no, that's where I parked my car. It just was not there anymore. There was another car in that spot. So I open up my purse, and I look in, and my keys are not there. So I immediately went back into the studio, and I looked at the people that were there, the owner and another person that's a yoga instructor there, and I just said, my car got stolen. Turns out this particular teenager had come into the studio. I think he had followed me in there and made up a story about, needing to wait for his family to come pick him up, and we let him, hang out in there, of course. And in the shuffle between classes, he grabbed the keys out of my purse. Didn't take my wallet, which, he just wanted to take my car.
Oh, no.
So that, being that was the third thing kind of within, 4 or 5 months, that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I just remember hugging the owner, and she's a great friend of mine, and I was just crying, and I was like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, who did I piss off? Like, what is going on? And she just kept saying, she's like, Katie, this is so random. Like, this means nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. So I went about 7 hours without my car. The cops found it that afternoon, and I was able to go back and get it. There was a little bit of damage, but it wasn't too bad. But I think that that happening any other time in my life, probably it would have been stressful, but I probably would have that would have rolled off my back. But being that was kind of the third thing that happened in a series of things, really kind of threw me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, like the months of Murphy's Law, right? It's like 6 months prior, your life is seemingly great, and you don't see anything, in the distance foreboding, and all of a sudden, you've lost your husband, you've almost lost your best friend, your dog, which I'm sure other pet owners, that itself would have thrown me off for the whole year. That, and then getting your car stolen just almost as like a screw you from the universe. What were you thinking in that moment? What was your mindset after you said the straw broke the camel's back? How did you pull yourself out of that low point too?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It was just like, I was kind of rolling with the punches and getting through the day before then, but that was it. And I was like, what more can happen? I didn't want to I kept saying that, like I had said it after my dog, had his surgery. I was like, what more thing, what else can happen? And then...
Oh, don't challenge the universe.
I know. That's what my therapist and I were like, we're not saying that anymore.
Yeah.
And then this happened. So, I think that once things kind of settled down from that, I ended up sold the house that we had together, moved into my own space in July, and that was huge for me. Just getting into my new space that was mine. It didn't have the memories of our relationship and things like that. That was huge for me. I think with all of those things, somewhere in there, I don't know where it was. It might have been after the stuff with my dog. But I was talking to the owner of the yoga studio, and I just told her, I said, I need to go on a yoga retreat this year. Like, I need to do that the second half of this year. I need something good to happen this year, and I can make that happen. And I'd been on one before and was kind of just casually looking. And one night we were at dinner. We did weekly dinners last year, and we were at dinner, and she said, hey, this other girl that went through yoga teacher training with me was hosting a retreat in Ireland, and it was going to be in September. And she's like, hey, there's 2 spots left. Do you want me to text her and see, if we can get those spots? And I was like, let's do it. So we planned that. And, I think having that on the books and knowing that was going to happen, and it was, I think we were there about 8 days doing yoga and hiking and riding horses and just being around other people and, being in Ireland and all of that. I think that, just having that, knowing that was going to happen was huge for me. Kind of another thing that happened in January, there's a style of yoga that I'm specialized in, and the lady that invented it, created it, I've trained under her a couple times prior to last year, and I always knew I wanted to assist her in one of her trainings, and that was a very big deal for me. And in January, kind of when all this stuff was coming to a head, she had returned one of my projects that I had submitted to her after a training and asked me to be an assistant. And so I scheduled that for October. And that was really kind of before all this stuff I really understood what all this was. Mm-hmm. But I planned that kind of in the second half of the year. So I think kind of through all of this, knowing that I had two things the second half of the year that I was really excited about, that I was doing for me, and they were, just very fulfilling, really kept me going through all of the hard times. I was like, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
No, I've always thought that when especially when I go home to visit my parents, it's always sadder to leave when we've always said it's always sadder to leave when we don't have something on the books.
Yeah.
You always want something to look forward to. And I love what you said also about not letting that be that bad year. You're like, I'm not going to let this year end like this. Yeah. I'm going to go out and make something good happen.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I know you were in therapy the whole time. You were dealing with a lot of these difficulties. Was there anything that you got from your therapy sessions in particular that really stuck with you and helped you push through? I know not challenging the universe was one, but anything else that comes to mind?
I just think having that constant support that, gave me that space to not feel like a burden, because, there's times where we feel like, oh, gosh, I don't want to reach out to this friend because I've reached out to her every time that I've been emotional or I've been crying, and, she might be tired of it or he might be tired of it, whatever. Just having that dedicated space for me to do that, and I have permission to do that, and I know it's not a burden for her. So to really be open and vulnerable with her, I think that was huge for me. One of the things, too, like I said, I am a therapist, and I've always, been a supporter of medicine. And I think that it does have a place. It's not always where I go with people first. I take things kind of a holistic perspective because I integrate yoga with my practice. So, I never really had the same appreciation for medicine as I did last year. One of the big things her and I talked about is me going on medicine. I kind of pushed it off for probably about a month after she first brought it up. But I was crying every day, and I was having trouble sleeping and things like that. And finally I just said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I went and got put on some medicine, and it worked.
Yeah.
I was still crying. It didn't take me away from that vulnerability, but it just wasn't as intense. And I was sleeping, which is huge. Like, if you don't get sleep, you just can't operate through the rest of your day. So I think, being willing to go on medicine, and even, for people out there that, I only was on sleep medicine for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then my antidepressant for maybe 4 or 5 months. So it really wasn't a forever thing. It wasn't long term. It was really to kind of get me over that hump. But I definitely gained, as a person and as a therapist, I gained a new appreciation for medicine. And I think that, with anything in life or anything in the mental health world, there's always a stigma with things. But for me, it was I needed it. There's nothing else that would have helped me like it did.
How do you think your experience going through everything you did in such a short amount of time helped you become a better therapist in your practice now?
Oh, yeah. I've thought a lot about that. I think that up until all of this happened, I would say I had a pretty good life. I had challenges here and there, but nothing too catastrophic, nothing that, was really out of the norm. And I hear about a lot of, really challenging, hard things in my office. And so me kind of looking at my life and hearing what other people have gone through really helped me see that, okay, life has been pretty good. But here it was. This was definitely the most challenging thing I've ever been through, and the most challenging year. I gained a lot of compassion and empathy. I was able to connect better with my clients and connect. I think, going back to Brene Brown, one of the things, with empathy is you have to connect to your own pain to connect with someone else's, and for that connection. And I think absolutely, I felt their pain in a different way, and I connected more with them. I think that helped me as a therapist. I think also everything that I've gone through and that I've learned and what helped me. I won't say that I did everything perfectly or I did everything by the books, but I think I did a lot of things in a very helpful way. And I think I can use that to help people get through whatever it is they're getting through. I had a conversation the other day with someone, and I said, you're kind of at a crossroads. You can either go this way and use a lot of unhealthy coping skills, and then you've added more problems onto the problems that you're already facing, or you can, make these choices over here, and yeah, it's going to suck for a while, and things are going to be hard, but you'll come out on the other side even better than you were before this.
Yeah. Your story is like so many others that I've had guests on this podcast where they were just walking through life, la-di-da, and then all of a sudden, bang, something happened and your world has just flipped. Did you feel that way in that time? Like, I don't recognize my life anymore, and how do you think you coped with that just mentally? Like, how do I move forward as this new person by myself?
Yeah, I think we all, I guess maybe we're taught at a young age to like kind of have a plan for your life, and maybe that's just something that we also do on our own. It's just like have a plan, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. And, my plan totally got shifted. It's like once I got married, nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced. So it's like once I got married, it was like, all right, this is my person. Like, this is my husband, and we're together. And never in a million years did I ever consider that, I would not be married again. And so, yeah, I think the identity shift that hit me, it's like, how did I get here, and what the heck has happened to me, and like, where do I go from here, and like, what's the meaning in all of this? Yeah. I think when you're in the throes of something, there's no way to find the meaning in it.
Yeah.
I think there's a quote by Steve Jobs. I think it's like, you can't connect the dots until they're behind you. And so I know that I've already been able to connect some dots, and I know there's more dots to connect moving forward. I think that, there's an idea in my head about writing a book, maybe doing some public speaking. I think coming on here and talking to you is part of that. That meaning is to be able to spread the message of, vulnerability, the message of, leaning on your support system, and having, these relationships in your life that you can lean on and you can go to when you are going through something challenging. And then, some of the other things that I did to really help myself move through this.
Yeah. I know you said that you kind of feel like this is a calling for you moving forward. I know that all of this tragedy for you is pretty recent, and I'm sure you're still dealing with a lot of it. Why did you feel this calling to help other people and to share your story?
I've always... I've done a few public speaking things in the past, and but more from a professional standpoint. But I've always really enjoyed it, and I've always wanted to spend more time honing in those skills of public speaking and how to create something really interesting for people. You don't want to get up there and bore people. So I think that this kind of fell into that, and I don't know where that's going to go. I've not thrown everything into that at this point, because I know there's more of the story that needs to connect, like those dots. But I think that doing something there, I think, part of me, a big part of who I am is helping other people. I'm a therapist. I'm a yoga instructor. So, I really want people to have support and feel support and, live a more authentic life and have more joy in their life and things like that. And so if me telling my story and showing people a way that they can deal with, hardship, just feels really good to me and feels really authentic.
Yeah. From what I've seen and experienced in conversations with people, not only on this podcast, but in my line of work, a lot of people suffer by themselves. And we mentioned that a little bit earlier. So when they hear other people's stories, I feel like it helps them connect and know that they're not alone. Have you seen that in your experience as a therapist and in your own personal experience?
Yeah, I think that, like I have been able to share parts of my story with some of my clients in a way to connect to their suffering, connect to just, we're two humans. It doesn't matter if I'm the professional over here and you're the client. So, yeah, I definitely think being able to, be able to talk about that with people at my office and share in that will help them and also helps me. And then I think just in my personal life and being open to people, and I think unfortunately there's going to be other people in my support network that are probably going to go through a divorce or go through other hardships like I did, with my dog and maybe with the car getting stolen. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's kind of rare. But yeah, I think that it will, just because I was open and communicated and willing to do that I think it will help other people too in the future.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the yoga aspect of your work too. I am far from a yogi. I can barely touch my toes. But I have done it a few times, and it really does help connect your mind, body, soul. For people who have maybe never tried it and are going through a hard time, would you recommend something like that? And what do you love about it?
Yeah, I think think that, for me, I always say that yoga for me it's not exercise. It's not, for me, it's more of moving my body. It's about connection to myself, connecting the mind and body, connecting to other people in the room. And for me, it's a huge part of it is the yoga community. It's another space for me to be around people that are similar to me. And I think that, I'll be very authentic about this part. I didn't practice a lot of yoga last year. I taught yoga. I didn't really get on my mat, and I just didn't make the space for it. But I think for me, it was more of the yoga community. And I think having some friends from yoga, going to that yoga retreat, assisting my teacher, I think that was really, it was yoga off the mat for me. And I think so much of yoga, you are moving your body, and we all know that that's great for you. And there is a connection part. There's a spirituality aspect for those that choose to go that way. But I think there's so much that comes off the mat. There's a lot of different kind of principles and things like that we're learning on the mat that can come off. And I think that that was very therapeutic.
Yeah. I ask this of a lot of guests who seem to be in a good place with their healing. If you could go back and talk to yourself when you were in the throes of the darkness, what would you tell Katie of that time?
Yeah. That you're going to get through it, that, make the best choice for you in the moment. Can be vulnerable, like I said that I was. Be okay with the tears.
Yeah.
There's so many of us, and myself included, big time, that didn't like to cry and didn't want to feel that deep grief and sadness. But be okay with the tears. And another kind of part of the story that happened that I didn't speak to, but that you will find love again. I started dating the end of the summer. And found someone relatively quickly that I had a great connection with, and I continued to see. He ended up moving to another city for his job by the end of the year, so that was kind of another negative thing that happened to me. But the best part of that story is that he just moved back last week.
Oh, yay!
And we're still together. So I think that, from all of this, and especially someone who's going through a divorce who may be very jaded on a significant relationship or jaded on love, from the beginning, I knew I want to get married again. I believe in love. It's very healing, and that I have found that again.
Oh, that makes me so happy. And I do want to ask you more about that, because there are so many people who are getting out of a really horrible marriage or even just a toxic relationship, and they just feel like, all right, I'm done. There's no way I'm doing this again. And finding it hard to get back out there, or feeling really down on themselves. How did you get yourself to, brush off, stand back up, get back out there?
I think it was just, because I had a good experience in a marriage up until the day that I didn't. I think that, I believe in marriage, and I believe in love and relationships. So I think me having that mindset, I started dating. I always told myself that, I needed to take care of myself first. I needed to take care of everything else. I needed to move. I didn't want to start dating somebody when I was still living in the home I had with my husband.
Yeah.
So once I moved, probably a month after that, month and a half probably, I decided to dip my toes just to see, okay, what's going on here? Am I ready? And like I said, I found someone pretty quickly. And looking back, and he knows this too, was I ready to start dating again? No. He sat with me through a lot of tears.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that made our relationship and has made our relationship so great is that we're both going through a similar thing, kind of at a similar time. So we both could connect to each other's pain and experiences. I think if I had started dating someone who had never been married and divorced before, I think it would have been very different. But yeah, so I think that he and that relationship has been another big part of my healing and recovery from all of that. But I think for people, give yourself time and space to heal and not be jaded and negative about it. But, when you're ready, being open to it and seeing, that you don't have to have another experience like you did the first time.
Yeah. And just like the worst things in your life can happen when you least expect them, sometimes the best things in life can happen when you're not looking for them as well. So that's awesome. Do you have any final words of advice for the listeners, some of whom might be going through something hard, or anything else you wanted to add or mention before we say bye?
Yeah, I always say, kind of in looking back with all this, like what helped me heal from it. And like I said earlier, vulnerability. and relationships. I think, ironically, you lose the most significant relationship in your life, and then it forces you to, take stock of who's in your life and who's there for me. And, I had some really great people that really stepped up to the plate, friends, family, all those people. And so I think that, lean on your support system, lean on your relationships. I always tell people that's what they're there for. They're there to share the joy in your life, but they're also there for the hard stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I so thank you for coming on. I think you have such a great perspective as being not only someone who's been through something really hard, but a therapist who had some really great advice. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you for listening to Unbroken, the podcast. We'll see you next time.